Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well, then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. I think that business owners who are able to scale their businesses in a very simple way are underappreciated and not celebrated enough. In fact, I think that we overemphasize how complicated things have to be and how much strategy is really needed in order to grow, when in reality, it just comes down to focus, honestly. And that is going to be the theme of today's episode with my guest today, Sam Vander Wielen. Now, Sam is an attorney turned entrepreneur. She's a leading legal educator to online business owners. She's the founder of Sam Vander Wielen LLC, the go-to contract template shop for online business owners that generates multi-seven figures annually. And she's the author of the book, When I Start My Business, I'll Be Happy. And she's the host, by the way, of the On Your Terms podcast. So although I just rattled off a bunch of things that she does, believe it or not, she is a very, very simple business. And she was able to generate multiple seven figures focusing on a core offer and just perfecting it. You know, I fall victim to this too. The shiny object syndrome. You want to do things that are interesting and fun. You don't want to do the boring stuff. But I'll tell you, the profits in the boring stuff. I'm dead serious. And we're going to be talking today with Sam about the concept of like, when I start my business, I'll be happy, how we're always chasing a carrot. We're always going to be doing that next big thing. And we're never going to be satisfied with what we've already built and want to perfect it, that we're always chasing that next thing. And we're going to talk through how to navigate that, those emotions, what were some of her biggest mistakes and factors for success early on. And even though she is a lawyer, today's not a legal episode. We're actually going to talk a lot about email marketing and other tactics that you can use today in your business as you scale. So let's dive in. Hey, Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey, Shannon, thanks for having me.
Of course. Would you mind just introducing yourself real quick to those listening in case they don't know who you are?
Of course, I'm Sam Vander Wielen. I'm an attorney turned entrepreneur, the host of On Your Terms podcast, and now the published author, which feels really weird to say, of my debut book, When I Start My Business, I'll Be Happy.
And I got to say, I love that title because I think everyone kind of feels that they've said that to themselves at some point. If they've started a business that, when I finally start the business, I know I'll be happy. Like that is a real feeling.
Yeah, I feel like we could probably take even business out and make a little blank and fill in the blank. I think I've done this throughout my whole life. Like when I become a lawyer, I'll be happy. When I get this job or get a certain salary, start a business. Once that business reaches X milestone, like there have just been so many times in my life when I've done that. And turns out, spoiler alert, not true. So, that was a big motivation for me to name the book this. Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like we're in this perpetual bubble based on human nature of always chasing the next thing. And no matter if you're starting a business or you're an established entrepreneur, there's always that one little carrot that's always dangling, right?
Yeah, there's always a carrot there. It's the point, I think, of what I've learned. If I could summarize it in anything, it's that the carrot is always outside of us. It's always something that's outside of us. So the biggest point is to stop putting it in this external thing and realize that whatever you've got now, like we can be happy with whatever it is now. It's not that thing. That carrot is going to change throughout your whole life. It's always going to alter and shapeshift itself. It's never going to be the thing that brings you the happiness.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated with your story and I want to get into that. But the first thing I want to ask you is what motivated you to write this book and become a published author? Like, what was the drive to get this message out there? Maybe something you were seeing or hearing.
Yeah, so I think there's both a little bit of like a selfish internal reason and then external. So my internal selfish reason was that ever since I was a little girl, I mean, writing a book just seemed to be the coolest thing that anyone could ever do. I had a horrific childhood and reading, escaping especially into fiction was everything to me. So I wish I had the talent to write fiction and give people that same ability. But I think that was kind of just like my personal motivation in terms of when I started a business. I was like, it would be really cool one day to write a book. But as I was going about building my legal templates business since 2017, as you know, Shannon, I went through hell and back. I had brain surgery very quickly after I started my business. Then my dad got leukemia. I became his caregiver and was his financial, provider. And then my dad passed away. And then my mom was killed within the same year that my dad passed away. And in doing all of that, I was still running a business, not only running it, but growing it. And one of the things that drove me the craziest was that everybody kept telling me I should just put my business aside or stop working for a long time. I mean, if I had stopped working, I would have stopped working for like 6 years. So that was impossible. But it also really annoyed me because I was like, that is a really incredible privilege that most people don't have. And I didn't have it either. I mean, I not only financially rely on myself and my income, my family does. And then my father was too while he was sick. And so I thought, like, where is that coming from? Why are people telling me that? And it was interesting because that's when I realized people were confusing how much work that they were all putting into their businesses and maybe not getting a return. And that is not my experience as an entrepreneur. I have figured out how to create less content. I rely on evergreen strategies. I rely on things like SEO. I have 47,000 people on my email list. I have these big, big drivers that don't require a lot of time. And so I didn't need to stop working. So I really wanted to write a book that taught people this marketing strategy and this kind of ecosystem that I had built. It was like, you don't need to confuse these two things. You can run a business that doesn't run your life.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of this kind of polarizing marketing out there where a lot of the entrepreneurship is associated with hustle. So they assume that you're hustling hard and they assume that you're out of breath and running and constantly at high heart rate, right? And then like you should slow down and it's like I don't need to slow down. I'm cool. I'm steady state, right? And you're realizing that people just have this impression that you're up here and you're actually not. Then the other thing is there's this marketing that's out there that's almost polar opposite side going like you can run a business and do basically nothing and you can just relax on the beach and it's like can we just normalize that it's somewhere in between those 2 things? Like, that you don't have to do one or the other or, you know, that it's not that simple, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point because it is something in the middle. And there was, a hustle period. And I write a lot about in the book that I do think that a little bit of hustle is not necessarily a bad thing at a certain point when you are hustling to get your business started. I was still working full time, getting things on the side. That was probably one of the most stressful and like time intensive periods. And so there's something to that. And I think also that's like when you're the hungriest. So there's a little bit of that energy and I don't know, something to capitalize on it there that
Mhm.
I think can be helpful to you long term in the business. But that hustle period, it's all about how you spend the hustle period, not like whether or not you hustle. So looking back on it, I was hustling to create these like big picture systems. And that's what ultimately paid off. It's like interest in a bank account.
Yeah, I think far too many people, especially those who come from corporate W-2 employee mindset, associate effort with earning, and they associate the harder I work, the more I have earned and the more I will make. That was a mind fuck. Can I just tell you that? Like, that was a mind fuck for me because I was always the like, I study, I get good grades. Yay. I work hard, I get paid more. Yay. You work hard, you get the promotion. And then you go into entrepreneurship and it is truly a smarter, not harder situation. It is truly a you can hustle and grind and be hustling and grinding on the wrong thing and have it never actually bear fruit for you. Have you seen that happen with folks that you've advised or even in your own journey?
Yes, absolutely. It's a very good point because, for example, I get asked all the time how I've been able to stay focused. Like a lot of people will rightfully accuse me of having a very simple business that, I only sell two products. I sell digital legal templates and then I sell the ultimate bundle that like packages these templates and trainings for people to start their businesses. And the ultimate bundle has made over $8.5 million in revenue just by itself. And people will always say, like, why aren't you ever called to go out and create all this other stuff? And I'm like, because it's working. So like I keep it simple, right? And like that's I think a perfect example to your point of where I could have gone out and been like, this is too easy. Like this thing I created 6, 7 years ago that of course I update, but like the bulk of the work is done. I could sit there and be like, this feels too easy. I need to go and make this complicated on myself in order for me to feel like I deserve or I've earned the revenue that it's making.
Yeah, like throwing a rucksack on the climb. I'm like, "Why? It's working. We're pacing. We're doing great. Why would I like pull an e-brake on myself and be like, let's make this harder?"
No, like, let's optimize the thing that's working. That's the way
Right.
I looked at it, is, like, instead of now, like, splitting the baby and diverting my attention to all these other places, it was like, "Well, this thing is working. Let's, like, forget double down. Let's, like, quadruple down."
Exactly. I think that takes a lot of discipline though, to not fall victim to this like shiny object syndrome, number one. Or number two, this false sense of ego that, I had a golden goose on this one, I can do it again. Or that I can just hit copy paste and get the same result. Like it's a false sense of belief there. And sometimes it works and you get lucky, but it's almost like going to Vegas and saying the slot machines work for me. And I'm like, just stay on that machine then, or just stick with that, or like walk away and be like, I won. Let's keep doing that over and over, as opposed to I have superpowers and I can go do anything. I think that it's a misunderstanding of how to interpret that. But also, I want to go back to something you said that's just hit me. The language you just used, though, when you said people accuse you of having a simple business, you're a lawyer, you're careful with words. You said accuse you of having a simple business. That was a very interesting word choice.
I think as people think it's a bad thing in our industry, which I think is so funny. I think a lot of times when I've gone around on podcasts or I've talked to some bigwigs in our industry, they're just like a little bit dumbfounded as to like, well, that's it. I don't know. It's been interesting. I've been doing quite a bit of like a podcast tour for the book, and I'm thinking like, as I talk about this more and more, I'm like, gosh, we make things like really hard on ourselves that we don't need to make hard on ourselves. And so I write a lot about this in the book about how I think it's really about finding a product that is really good, like
Yeah.
creating a product that's really good that actually produces some sort of result, some tangible result, or like it works, it fixes the thing, or it solves the problem it says it's going to solve. Do that, and, like, that's it. So, I think when I created the ultimate bundle, I mean, through a series of zhuzhing it and fixing it over time, which I talk a lot about in the book, but, like, I make sure that it really helps people to start an online business legally, and then the rest kind of does it like, own because first of all, I have the results, but also those people, who I call foot soldiers, then go out and tell lots of other people about it. So that has also allowed it to stay very simple. So, yeah, I just think it's funny. People think it's, like, a bad thing to be simple, and I'm laughing over here with my simplicity.
They see all these potential opportunities of other ways you could do it, but they fail to see well, it's working. And actually, if I stay the course, that's where the biggest opportunity is because I've already found, like a winning hole here in the desert. I've already found some gold here. So I'm going to stick here. Like, I think there's something in here and I haven't dug all the way to the bottom yet. And I think that takes a lot of discipline too. And I can say this, like, guys, I believe this to my core, what Sam is saying, because like, yes to all of it. I have done both of those things. So I have started a business, gotten distracted, and said, I want to do the podcast and this and the email marketing. And I wanted to like scatter myself and say yes to all the things and be able to do all those things because it was fun and it was interesting and it was exciting and the build is fun. And I got to a point where I wanted to have all these different offers for all these different types of people, different levels of business. And then I just kind of like came back to wait a minute, the thing I do works really well for a certain type of business owner. We've proven results in that area and it's the most lucrative service. I eventually cut everything off except for that, doubled my sales in 1 year. And I was like, oh, simplifying is the answer. It really is editing it down to eliminating distractions, focusing your team on one core effort, focusing your processes on perfecting that, and then just growing that and focusing. Like I knew it in theory, but I really have lived it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see why that would work, and I was planning, a YouTube video that I'm gonna do in a couple of weeks this morning, and I was thinking about how I'm actually a proponent of having more entry points to your business than offers. So, like, I've kept it very simple with only having these 2 offers, but I'm constantly, because 'cause I'm like an email list building queen, so I'm always thinking about what are new entry points into these things and, like, giving people different routes in. And maybe as you're saying this, I'm realizing, like, maybe part of the problem is that a lot of people in our industry have it flipped where you usually, like, create more and more and more offers because you think, "Oh, the more offers I have, then the more, like, opportunity to sell." But actually, if you only had 1 or 2 really good offers, but you gave people more entry points into your business, like lead generators of different freebies or different ways to sign up for your email list, and then be exposed to those 1 or 2 offers and keep it simple, keep it consistent, I actually think that's a better way to make sales.
I agree, but I also think that it also gives you better data and feedback on what's working. If you can only have like remember when in school when we learned in science class like controls versus variables? So if you only have one variable at a time, which is the different entry points, you can find out what's working. But if you try to change like the various offers and then all these other entry points, one of like 6 things could be working, make up for the other 5, and you'll never know. You just know that the combination of all these things is somehow working, but I don't know which button is pushing it. And that's kinda scary because it could be a very expensive way of growing when you don't know, you can't actually get to the root of what's working. So I assume that you also look at the data and that that's been informing a lot of your decisions on entry points and email list building. I mean, you don't accidentally build a list of 47,000.
No, we mean we track things pretty heavily with links, right? So like of having unique links so that I know like, oh, this is coming. I can always tell where someone's like origin story is, when so when people are purchasing the ultimate bundle, for example, we know what percentage of those leads are coming from ads versus organic traffic. And then even from the organic traffic, are they coming from social media, from YouTube, from the podcast, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want listeners when you say, "I run a simple business," to misconstrue that for, like, low effort, surface level, unintentional. I think that the simplicity of your business and the simplicity of those who succeed is built in foundations of identifying what works either through data, through experience, and then noticing that and taking action on it as opposed to, you know, trying everything and going like this, fingers crossed, right? And saying, let's see what works. Can you talk to us a little bit about like some of the strategies that you've implemented and that what you recommend in the book? I want to unpack a few of those because it's not a legal centric book. It's not a legal centric piece of advice here. This is about how you built a very successful business, but also infusing some of your background, which I think is unique. So, could you uncover a few of those strategies that you lean into?
Yeah. So one of the things I dive deep into in the book that I just don't hear talked about enough in the online business industry is really taking the time to do some of the work on the front end before you create a product. So oftentimes what happens in online business is that you come up with an idea for a product or you see somebody else creating a product in some way, you slap a different name on it, create the content yourself and then put it out there and then people are aghast. It's like, why isn't this thing selling? So oftentimes it's because we skip these like beginning steps of, whether there's actually demand for this product, which seeing other people sell it is proof of concept where we get that. But is there too much related to the supply, for example, or is the supply too much for the demand? And then we need to know like if there's some sort of differentiating factor that's missing. So, for example, I talk about in the book when I started my business, I was not the first person to create legal templates. And then there were way bigger companies like LegalZoom and these kinds of things. So I thought, well, what's missing when it comes to online business owners? I was getting a lot of questions from people. And so I was thinking, well, why are they asking me when there are already alternatives out there? So I started doing research on these alternatives and I saw a gaping hole in the market. So that is the business I created very specifically, even down to the point of like my branding and my branding colors were not only the opposite of everything else that was being offered, but I also worked really hard to connote a authentic to me, but like authentic vibe of sorts that was not being offered at all at the time. And that was like, I was consistently hearing feedback was the thing that was keeping people from investing in those other alternatives that were available to them at that time. So I think that that's like a huge thing and a huge theme throughout my book of whether you are designing your business from the start, like I did with the legal templates business, or you're about to go out and create a product, or you're about to go out and offer a new freebie of some sort, like taking this kind of like step by step methodical approach is something I talk a lot about in the book, in addition to all my email list building strategies and my funnel strategies and all of that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues is implied and assumed demand.
Yeah.
Like, that is the biggest thing that and I struggle with this too, right? Everyone struggles with this, I think, a little bit, especially if they're in a knowledge-based like me
Mm.
in accounting, you in legal. I think that we assume we have value to share and education is valued. No.
Yeah.
Nah. They wanna pay someone to do it for them. Nobody is hungry for learning the things that we know. People are hungry for the results associated with the things that we know, and they just want the dang template, the dang tool. Just give me the thing I need to go move as quickly as possible. And we have a misconstrued impression of the values of our customer that they somehow align with ours. That, like, what we value or what we think is valuable is somehow implicitly valuable in the marketplace. And there couldn't be a bigger divide there unless you really know your customer. I think people don't spend enough time understanding who their customer is before they go to market with a product.
Yeah, oftentimes people want to make their customers like them. Like they're trying to build like this audience of mini me's. And I actually see this a lot in the intuitive eating space. I just so happen to have like tons of customers who are in the health and wellness space. And people who get into intuitive eating usually have had their own journey. I'm just sharing this as an example. You guys can apply this to your own industry, but like typically speaking, it's because someone has gone through their own journey with it and they've consumed a lot of content and learned a lot and they've read the books on intuitive eating. And then they start these businesses trying to help other people who want to learn more about intuitive eating, except that 99% of the population doesn't know what that is, and that's not what they're seeking. They're seeking maybe a different or better relationship with food. They're not seeking intuitive eating, and they don't need
Right.
to become intuitive eating masters. So, like, they will make the mistake of, like, teaching everything they know and sharing all the behind, and it's like, that's not what they want. To your point, they have a problem that they essentially want you to solve. So, if you can switch the way that you're speaking with your audience from more of like, are they problem aware? I mean, hopefully they are even problem aware, but if they are problem aware, then you're speaking to the problem that they're suffering with, not like you're in a classroom with them.
Hey, it's Shannon, and I wanted to remind you that the love language of podcasters is reviews. If you wouldn't mind taking a couple of seconds just to leave us a review if you're enjoying this show, we would really, really appreciate it. Okay, back to the show. I actually dissect that down to symptom aware and then problem aware.
Yeah.
It's like I feel a symptom, I don't know what the problem is. And sometimes people don't know what the problem is, but they do know there is one. They couldn't identify what the problem actually is that needs solving. And much like my industry, right? Your intuitive eating example is like business owners don't want to learn how to read their P&L necessarily. They just want more profit or they want more growth and they want the result. And they trust people like me to show them how to get that. But they don't need to know the science that goes behind it or learn the new language. Like, just tell me what it says. I don't want to learn Spanish, just tell me what this translation says. Google Translate isn't teaching you the language. They're just saying, here's the answer. And I think that's the value of like the instant, answers to questions or the support that you need. There's just people over indexing the education aspect. And I agree with you. They think education is value. And I think that that's not necessarily always the case.
Yeah, I think that's part of why your business doesn't make you happy because a lot of people like they start the business because they want to share that information and they're really excited. And then they're kind of heartbroken to be like, oh, that's actually not what people want. Or like people often describe me and like what I sell as the broccoli hidden in the mac and cheese. And I'm like, I want to sell the broccoli. Like that's what I'm excited about, just like you, with being excited about numbers and money and like that's because you know a lot about it, and that's the huge value for you to share, but people don't want the broccoli, you're just shoving the broccoli in the mac and cheese.
Do you know that that's what I call this show?
No. That's so funny.
It's in the intro, guys. I have proof. I just want to say broccoli in the intro. I think I say vegetables, but I say if business finance is like eating your vegetables, consider this the ranch dressing. Or consider that's the Velveeta for my other, like, Gen X millennials. So, like, smother it in Velveeta. I always say if, your P&L is broccoli, then I'm, like, shoving it Velveeta so that it's more digestible, which is hilarious. I was like, "This is my legal doppelganger over here."
Yeah, but a lot of people try to sell the broccoli.
They just kinda, like, create an appetite for broccoli as opposed to soaking it in cheese.
Yeah, they try to convince people that broccoli is actually better than like, "No, no, it's guys, it's good, like, try roasting it, try putting salt on it, like, try doing all these things." It's like, actually, no, it's just people have a lot of other things going on in their life, right? And so it's like, I think people mean well, but they don't have time, and so, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, like, even when this morning when I was outlining my YouTube video, it was like, I was going back through my outline and being like, "How can I make this simpler? How can I make this simpler?" Like, I know that I think that this is all what they need to know, but what's just like the main point here that I can make and make this simpler? Yeah.
And people value speed, people value convenience, they value the simplicity, and the biggest lesson I had to learn in business was less is more in a way, like less generates more, and that effort doesn't equal earning. Like, you don't necessarily earn revenue, you don't earn income by working harder, you do it by working in the right places, like I mentioned before, and I think that also builds the confidence. To your point about, people wanna educate because 'cause they're insanely passionate, which is amazing, it's a gift, but when you're starting a business and you're selling online, especially, like, when you're reaching this target audience, you have to realize that, like, it's not personal. It's not personal, like, they don't dislike you if they're not buying your product. I think people then too closely associate and like you said, link emotion. I've finally when I start my business, I'll be happy. Like, you're now saying when the business reaches a certain milestone, I will then anchor emotions to this, and I think that can be a little bit detrimental too because I feel like there's a bit of a neutral emotion that has to be in a strategic kind of approach to business, that you have to infuse, else you're gonna be riding that roller coaster pretty hard.
Yeah, in the book, I talk a lot about how I went into this business thinking like, oh, when I get away from my horrible boss, like then everything will finally be good. And like when I can pay myself a salary, when I make X amount of money in my business, or reach some other sort of milestone. And in reality, what it's turned out to be is actually that the more I have healthfully separated myself from my business, whether I was making $1,000 a month or $350,000 a month, I have become happier from doing so. So, like, because my happiness now does not exist in the business. So, whether the business is doing good or bad or somewhere in between, or someone leaves a bad comment or sends me a mean email, that's not me. That's the business. And so, I've just separated myself from it and worked on this. And this is something I talk a lot about in the book that I think you need to do early before you're quote unquote successful. Like, it might be easy for you to listen to this and say, well, you can do that now because you're further along. I actually started doing this very early, when things were much rockier. And I'm so glad I did because I get a lot of feedback now. There are a lot of eyeballs on everything I do. There is a lot of commentary on everything I do. And so thank goodness I separated myself and started working on that muscle, a lot earlier.
Yeah, I agree. And, even if you don't have a lot of that feedback, I think that you have to really listen harder to what you are getting and not dismiss it either. I think people also make excuses of, "Oh, well, oh, they didn't like that because, like, they don't know." Or, like, that you're somehow in a better position to, like, they don't know they need this. And you kind of put yourself in the position of, well, it's because I'm smarter, I know more, I'm, better positioned to educate on this, like, what do they know type of attitude. It's just like, "Ugh, they don't even know how bad they need this." I think that can be a detriment to your business with that attitude because I think I in a way, I don't believe in this, like, customer is always right typical sentiment, but your customer is always trying to tell you something, and it's a question of whether you're listening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, depending on what people are saying, I'd sometimes take it as an opportunity to remember that I'm not in the business of convincing people. Because when you're in the convincing stage, you're dealing with people who maybe aren't even symptom aware, let alone problem aware. And so I'm looking more for the probably problem aware, if not symptom aware. So at least I can start connecting the like, hey, that symptom you're having, it's because of this problem. And here's the
Mm.
solution that I offer for you. But a lot of people I see creating content, I see them coming more from this place of like, this is so important. This is why this is so important. This is why you must pay attention to me. And it's like you're speaking to the wrong person. You're trying to proselytize, and that is not the way to go about it. You should be looking for the people who are like, yeah, I do keep running into this thing, or like, I feel like I've tried everything in my business. I just don't know how to make more profit from this. Or when I do look at my P&L, I don't know what it says. I wish I understood it. Like that's who you're looking for, not the people who are like, "I don't care about money."
Yeah, exactly, and that was something I struggled with, right? I was trying to take people from "I don't give a shit" to "I care." That's really fucking hard. It's really hard to, like, get people to care or be in the convincing business, to your point. I wish this episode was in my ear 5 years ago, and I wish I had the book 5 years ago then, but that's why it's so spot on, though, and why I'm glad you wrote it, because I feel like people need to hear this who are just starting out, or even if you are an established entrepreneur, there's always gonna be this something that's popping up where it's like, if only I did this, if only I did that, and then we're faced with distractions and temptations all the time that will then, derail us from our main goal. What are some of the other sort of tactical tips that you cover in the book, especially around the marketing side of things and positioning yourself or branding?
So along similar lines, I talk a lot about creating no-brainer freebies, what I call no-brainer freebies. So things that are again speaking to the person that has a problem, is problem aware. And your freebie itself positions itself as providing some sort of quick win or quick solution. Same thing when it comes to freebies as when we're talking about products or even like your general marketing strategy. A lot of times people will create freebies to build their email list that they want or that they see other people creating, or just that they're like, "Oh, I heard you should create a PDF. So like, here's a PDF and then that's it. But we don't often think about what would actually be helpful to the person. And in the problem that they're experiencing, what resource is like a really good resource you can create that gives them a quick win. So
Mhm.
we create this. So one way is to think of it from there. Another way I do this is by reverse engineering. So if you have a product that's already selling and that is a good product, can we reverse engineer it and think what would be a good freebie that would lead to this product? So that's like another way to think of it and build your email list in the process.
Yeah, or how could we solve like, let's say your product solves 3 main problems or, like, a problem that's at level 3. How could we solve the level 1 and 2 problems? How could we, create a mechanism where now there's actually a hunger and demand for the core product or an awareness, right, that the core problem exists that our offer solves? Like, how do we then create that? I think that's the key thing, and I think that freebies, in my opinion, in the last, we'll say 4 or 5 years, have elevated to a point where the expectation is like, I'm giving you my email only if it's like up here good. Cause like I ain't giving my email for a PDF anymore. I'm just not that like I'm not getting spammed for like months and months at a time, based on a PDF download, unless it's like super freaking tangible. Uh, you know, have you seen that too? Like, what are you advising in terms of freebies? Like, what do you think makes a knockout no brainer freebie?
I think it can be whatever medium is the best to communicate your resolution to their problem, right? So, like, it depends. If what you do is super visual, like, give them a quick video, give them a secret podcast episode. Like, if you know that they love audio, and that's a great way. I actually am a big fan of offering it in different mediums, the same freebie in different mediums. So, like, let's say you have a webinar, can you also offer it as an audio only, like, secret podcast? So, for people who are busy, have a long commute, are taking long walks, are cooking dinner for the kids, can they also consume it in a different way so that you meet them where they are, right? Where they still get the information. So I think about that sometimes. I've also been playing more like I have my what I would call like my VIP freebies that are kind of like the always there. I have a webinar, I do have a guide because, with what I do that still it makes sense with having to have like all this legal information. So I have that. I have like a checklist and things. But I've also been playing with like just yesterday, for example, I had an idea. People are always asking me for like a couple of like a series of a bunch of podcast episodes I've done on my On Your Terms podcast. And so normally when people DM us about this, we just send them the link. And yesterday I was like, what's an easy way to get them on the email list? Well, we can create a playlist of these episodes. So we don't, for one, have to keep reinventing the wheel and sending these links, but let's get them on the list. So we use ManyChat on Instagram, and yesterday I put on stories like, comment money if you want me to send you this playlist. And it was like ding, 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 ding. And so we just automatically integrated it with our email list. So people just had to put their name and their email. And then when they just automatically got a link to the playlist. So like they're not going to get spam for a 6-month marketing strategy or anything like that. But now they're going to get added to my weekly email list.
And I love that too. And we did something similar with the playlist because what we did was we grouped similar episodes together on different themes. So if like you're struggling with this, like here are the top 10 episodes. Cause we did for a solid 3 years, we did 5 a week. And we were like, we realized that you're not listening to all of these and you may have missed a few. So if you want a playlist centric on this, here are our best 10 episodes on this topic. And that did really well. Here's the other thing. Not only is it a good email list builder, but also people are now dipping back into the podcast and now they're actually absorbing more of that content. It's kind of this circular like win win win. And it's also not singular. They can also share these episodes, right? So there's nothing secret about the content. The content was always public, but the value you're giving is packaging that. So I think that people overestimate how hard they have to work for a no-brainer freebie, and they think that it has to be this like well-produced freaking video series, a drip campaign, whatever. And I'm like, it could be as simple as do you have a podcast or do you have content? Can you package it in a way that is easy to understand or just like save people time in finding answers to stuff? I think that's all it comes down to.
Two of my biggest last year were, or in the past year, have been quick walkthrough tutorials of something. So we had the BOI form, the beneficial ownership information form, where I just filled mine out in real time and talked through it. Like, here's how I'm filling out. This is why. This is what I'm putting in. It was like a 5-minute Loom video, and we had thousands of people sign up for that. And it was free and was super helpful to people. And then I've also done that with an email walkthrough where I teach you like how I structure my weekly emails to people and like how I tell stories and always connect that to a business lesson. And that's just another walkthrough video tutorial that now has gotten thousands of downloads.
And I think that's, like, one of the barriers people have is, "I don't have time to record a video and do all the production and do all the I don't have time to." Yeah, this is me too, by the way, but, like, "I don't have time to do all that stuff." And it's like, just then hit loom record while you're doing stuff you already do. And it's out of control how people think that there has to be this, like, top-notch cinematic quality, and it's just not. Like, it's all in what the result is, the value, what they're gonna extract from it, and that's the most important thing. I think we're just way overcomplicating for our own sakes. We're adding all of these other barriers in place to, like, "Oh, when I have a really good production crew, I'll start the podcast," right? When I have a really good, camera, I'll do the YouTube. Guys, I've been doing this for what, 5 years now? I got this microphone in the Rodecaster, like, a year or 2 in. I was doing voice notes on my phone for a hot minute, and then even in YouTube, like, a lot of my solos are not on video, and that's okay. Like, we still put the content out anyway, and it's doing well. So, it's really not about some of that cosmetic stuff, and that's exactly to your point about, like, throwing conditions on yourself to go do the thing because you feel like it's not perfect or it's not ready or you're not happy enough, right? Or, like, we're creating all these, like, fake barriers.
Yeah, I always think about this like quote that I heard many years ago about how if you're worried that you are having a bad hair day, don't worry about it because everyone else is just worried about whether they're having a bad hair day. And so I kind of think about that when I create things like this, where it's like no one really cares. I mean, I have a multi 7 figure business for many years and I throw together Loom videos all the time that get thousands of opt ins. It's like, it's just about, it looks fine. It's not bad, but it looks fine. I'm not doing anything fancy. People just want the information. Like if it's good and you keep it short and like to the point, that's all that matters. And then I know how to package it in terms of more of like promoting it as to why you should download it, which is kind of the next big important step. But yeah, that's really all people care about.
And then talk to me a little bit about user experience too, because
Mm.
along with the consumption of this type of content, right? I see a lot of people create like more barriers, right? Or more work on the consumer to like, well, you have to log in and create an account to go access the portal to get the content to do the whatever. Like, I've just seen a lot of that. Like, you opt in, but then there's like another thing. And then the emails, like, oh, stay tuned. The email will come shortly. Oh, there's this other thing I need you to go do. And at least when I'm on the receiving end of those, I'm just like, ugh. I just like wanted to click a button and get the dang video. Can we just do that? Can we just have the video and I get access and we're cool, it's transactional. I just feel like there's a lot of, hoops they put people through.
Yes. Yeah. I have a brilliant team behind the scenes, and I'm always the one that's saying, like, okay, but how can we just make this simpler? How do we just make it easier? Right. And just make it really easy for people. So I think you should think about that at every step. I think about it starting on the opt in page. That there's just an easy, simple opt in form. I'm only asking them for the information I absolutely must have. So first name, email, that's it. And so we just try to make that as easy as possible. But then even in the delivery of it, like, I mean, it's a pretty well-known email marketing, I don't want to call it secret, but like it's an important tip to make sure that whatever you're offering that you give it up right away. So it's, I link to the video or the PDF or whatever it is like right away in the email in the delivery email. And even like with the playlist example I gave you that I did yesterday, that was where like in the DMs they could just say like what's your name? Shannon, what's your email? And then you put your email and then it was like great, here's your playlist and that's it. So they don't need to go check their email, they don't need to go anywhere else. I've just integrated it with ConvertKit or now Kit, so that we're just taking their name and email, and that's it. I'm giving them the goods. I'm not trying to hide it.
Yeah, you're not throwing up more barriers and, like, more information. Because even though, like, us as business owners, we want more information, you have to be really careful about the user experience, and I think there's, like, people are also way too focused on the data collection and all that stuff, but I'm like, "But yeah, but how does your customer feel when they're done getting through this? Like, do they feel successful? Do they feel like they got what they needed?" I just think then we also immediately try to put them into some type of sales funnel. And talk me through, like, you know, in a way, not that it's conflicting, but like when you run a simple business and you love doing email marketing can be very complicated. It feels like a big web of experiences, funnels, and sequences and things. How do you keep that in that like simplicity mindset? Like, how do you keep that flowing, keep it humming, and infuse your approach of simplicity into that type of dimension of your business?
One thing I do is that I have a method to get on my email list, which like behind the scenes I call easy email list. Very creative, I know. But I have a way for people to just start getting my emails without going down some sort of marketing funnel and all of that. The way that I was able to do that was by creating a newsletter that in and of itself is valuable. So we've been talking a lot about email list building strategies using things like freebies, like videos and
Right.
PDFs and all that stuff. But you can also, like, if your emails every week provide value to your audience, then you should talk about your emails and why they're good and why people should get them and what they're going to get out of it and give people an easy entrance. So I have a form that people can fill out. It's just like start getting my weekly email is called Sam Sidebar. And so I say, like, start getting Sam Sidebar every week and just put your name and email here. Boom. They just start getting my weekly emails. So I think that that's a really good way. I also do a lot of like consent based marketing, I guess, where, people will sign up for certain things. And I'm like, hey, I have this free 8-day legal challenge, for example. Would you like to get an email from me every day for the next 8 days going through this challenge? Or would you rather just start getting my weekly emails? And people are allowed to click that in the delivery email and kind of choose their own adventure.
I love that. I think the whole theme of everything we've talked about is essentially like breaking down the barriers for your customer and for yourself. Like breaking down those barriers for your customer to get access to you. Even it doesn't mean it have to be personalized, like have your phone number, text you access. It could be, but it doesn't have to be exclusive access, but they can feel like they have quick access to everything they're asking for without overcomplicating series and sequences and funnels and all this stuff. And at the same time, isn't that easier for you too? It's easier for you to not manage these crazy things. And it's also just simpler for the business to make profit off of what's working and then just kind of let it flow, let it ride. How often are you reassessing these things and kind of reworking just to make sure that everything's still humming along?
Constantly, I would say. I mean, we have so many leads coming in. There's also a little bit of like disentangling some of what I've done over the years where I've had a business now for so long that it's like, well, there are freebies. People are finding freebies that are like buried in some freebie graveyard somewhere of like a podcast I did 8 years ago or something like this. So there's a little bit of chaos, now with how big it has been over the years. And I've tried certain things that haven't gone well. And so we've like shut it down on our end, but it's still out there floating around somewhere. So that does make things complicated, I think, as your business goes on over time. But I am always looking at, well, I'm actually, these days, I would say I'm always looking at simplifying. So, like, for example, I went recently and I slimmed down all the freebie offerings that we have, just overall, period. Like, slimmed them down, was like, let's like archive this one, let's retire this one. Then I decided that for each quarter throughout the year, we're only going to be focusing on like 2 to 3 of those freebies at all, period. So that means that my YouTube videos and podcast episodes would only mention certain ones. My social media content would only mention certain ones. Certain ones would be focused on in content elsewhere. And so even just like deciding to only focus on a few at a time has been really helpful. And so then we're always revisiting that on the back end.
Yeah, I think that one of your key success factors is really focus, disciplined focus. That is underutilized in the entrepreneurial space, I think, is we all need to cultivate that trait of like, disciplined focus and a listening ear, a constant listening ear to like what's working, what isn't working, and being able to tweak and pivot as needed and steer the ship without just like "Oh, let me wait and see if this works in the next 6 months." No, it's not working. Like, it's not working, let's try something else, let's tweak it a little bit, right? You have to let certain things simmer, but I do think that taking those quick actions and listening to the feedback is crucial as you're trying to navigate and figure out. So if you're in that building phase, right? We're talking about the build, the hustle. If you haven't quite figured that out yet, I think that's the biggest thing you can take away from today's episode is to really focus on a few things at a time and really listen to the results to determine what the next thing's gonna be. It's good to try a lot of different things, but I think that at a certain point, you have to then narrow it, and you have to be really intentional about what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think there are 2 things you can do to help you through this process. So one is that, as my mom always used to say, it's really important to understand the mechanism of what something is. And my mom was a doctor. She was always interested in like the medical pathway that a process went through, that like cause and effect. And so, I am often looking at that to like start to understand. And you only really do that by paying attention to the patterns. So like Shannon said, normally I would say, oh, stick with something for 6 months, stick with something for 9 months to see. You can't start a YouTube channel, for example, and 6 months in say this isn't working. It's going to take
Right.
longer than that, or podcasts, as you know. So normally I would say that, but I think over time you get quicker because I understand why. I'm like, oh, I messed that thing up. Like, whoops, I screwed this thing up. This titling is bad. The opt-in page is not optimized. I need better copy here. And usually once I fix one of those things, it does do better. So I think like strengthening that muscle over time and learning the mechanism. But also the second thing is that something we've been talking a lot about throughout the episode is that separating your identity from these things is crucial because we need to remove the personal side of all of this. Your YouTube channel isn't not working because you suck or because you're not pretty enough or because you do this or do that, right? It's because of some packaging in your content. And so it's crucial that we start separating you and your identity from the business.
Exactly. And I mean, it's kind of the fun of business. It's also the biggest challenge, I think, is like you don't get a memo saying what's not working. You have to kind of trial and error and figure it out. But that constant testing is just part of the process. Um, Sam, I really enjoyed today's conversation. Guys, pick up a copy of the book. When I start my business, I'll be happy. You have a copy with you, right?
Yes, and also I was going to say I have some freebies for you guys related to the book. So if you order my book when I start my business, I'll be happy. I want to give you two gifts. So one is that you'll get immediate access to my email list builder course. So it's the ultimate email list growth toolkit. I teach you how to add 1,000 subscribers to your email list using my no-brainer freebie strategy, my storytelling walkthrough, and then I give you story prompts. So it's a little mini email list builder course that you get access to for buying my book. And then you'll also get to join my No BS book club in May, where we're going to do 4 live sessions with me where we actually implement everything in the book as a group. So if you go and order the book that Shannon has from samvanderwielen.com/book, you can just head back to that same page and get your bonuses.
Amazing. Guys, it'll be in the show notes too. Go pick up a copy. It's available now. Sam, thank you so much for jumping on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so if you've been listening to the show for a while, you know I love talking about profit and cash flow. But if you've mastered these things, the next level thing to be focused on is your customer value. If you have to constantly hustle to sell more and hit your revenue goals, it's important to think about how you can deliver more value, build retention, and maximize the lifetime profitability of every customer. When you invest in a power session, we're able to dive into your customer acquisition cost and determine some personalized strategies to decrease your costs and increase the lifetime value of your customers. Click the link in the show notes to learn more.